I call Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I think we could all be forgiven for thinking that this is a very recent problem that's just arisen, given some of the speeches that have gone before. But, Mr. Speaker, the first Housing New Zealand house was built in 1937, not that far from here in Miramar, and for decades after that, Mr. Speaker, it took decades after that at least before the first Housing New Zealand houses were insulated. So this isn't a new issue that has arisen. Those houses were cold and likely damp in 1937 and they were until recently, until all the houses in Housing New Zealand stock that could be were insulated. We're well on track to insulate 26 times more houses than Labor did in their 9 years, and I think that's a phenomenal achievement, because really putting our money and our actions where our mouth is, actually, to do a good job for those people in that disadvantaged position. Mr. Speaker, there's been quite a bit of talk about something like a warrant of fitness for a housing stock, but Mr. Speaker, that would add $100 million a year just to do the inspections, or $225 per home. That amount of money is far better going into insulation and into smoke alarms, which will make a real difference to those people, Mr. Speaker. The significant issues such as excessive dampness, faulty wiring and those sorts of things are in fact covered under current legislation. So what's needed, Mr. Speaker, isn't more rules, it's actually enforcement. And that is coming in under this bill, where we're strengthening more the legal provisions to allow for that very enforcement that is actually needed. So I think, Mr. Speaker, this is a fantastic bill. It actually comes from the party that looks after the people at the bottom of the heap and makes their lives better, and that's backed up by lots of legislation put forward by this party, and I commend it to the House. Thank you.
Members, this debate is concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill be considered by the Social Services Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government